All right, before I get started, I want to personally thank Maryland Association of CPAs and Ryan for helping keep me on track. He was like a hound dog making sure I got this in, as my travel schedule was pretty heavy. So I know it's like herding cats, and everybody did a really good job. So what we're going to cover today is just client experience, right? And it's a pragmatic approach to pretty nebulous concept for the most part. I am going to ask some questions, so I will ask for some participation. It can just be hand raising. If you know the answer, that'll be great too. A little bit different from me just standing up here talking. Even for 15 minutes, it's a little hard to hear my voice for that long straight. So just before we get started, here's some information about me. I also have a session tomorrow on cyber liability in the credit card industry, so I won't dive into this too much. I am the director of CPACharge. We're an online payments platform. We help CPA firms accept client payments online in various ways and various forms of payment. And I'll cover that just a little bit later, but no real pitch in this. I also have a history as a business owner as well. I owned an agency out in Los Angeles and expanded to Austin and ended up working as a VP of digital experience at a larger agency called Springbox. And also was the director of digital strategy for the Business Marketing Association, so on and so forth. And then I also was a member of Provisors. Are there any Provisors members here? I don't know if they've made it to Baltimore yet. Nope. All right. So what is client experience? Can anyone, actually, before I get started, just show of hands, who feels confident they understand the concept of client experience? It's like 2.5. I saw jazz hands over there. All right. So case in point, right? It's a little nebulous. So I was going to ask what is client experience, but that leaves it up to the two of you who rose your hands. Not to put you on the spot. Could you give me an idea? How would you define client experience? Yes, you raised your hand?
I would say for our firm, you actually have to ask your clients how their experience was. So we survey them at the end of the package and say, what did you like, what didn't you like, and how can we make this better?
Yeah.
So that's really understanding our client experience, and you don't ask the question.
You just made my day. That's exactly where we're headed with this. So just to repeat that for those who may not have been able to hear, she described client experience as just asking clients, right, at the end of maybe a transaction or a project or whatever it is that you're working on, how they felt about that, right? But the key word I would say is ask, and we're going to cover that here in a second. The reason I wanted to really define this today is because how many of us in the room, show of hands real quick, have heard the term client experience in our industry, feel like it's coming up, okay, more, okay. Oh, it was just saying there was a few more, you don't have to raise your hands more. Not trying to pressure everybody into answering. But it's a bit nebulous because that conversation around client experience is often monopolized by the technology companies and companies that pitch solutions within that arena in defining what client experience is, and they use that as their differentiator. Right? And that's not a bad thing, and a lot of them can do good, right? In regards to your client experience, CPACharge is one of those that fits into that framework. But let's take a look at what it is. So I just needed an excuse to use this GIF, that's all. I love that GIF. So when we're talking about client experience, it's really customer experience, right? You might have heard it referred to as CX, and it's the product of an interaction between an organization and the customer over the duration of their relationship. Pretty straightforward, right? And there's three main components, and we're not going to dive into this. This is not going to get super technical because as we just learned earlier, not many of us are very familiar with client experience, so this is really going to lean towards a pragmatic kind of tactical approach that we're going to dive into in just a second. But the three main components are the customer or the buyer's journey, right? Their experience as they travel through, awareness, and consideration and decision, and there are multiple different ways in which these are defined, but those are usually the three biggest buckets and how they choose to work with you. The touch points and interaction within that journey, and then obviously the physical and digital environments in which they live is part of that journey. So what's their experience like in your office when they're coming to visit you and sitting down in your chair? How does the office feel? How does your staff feel to them? How does the conversation feel? And then there's the digital side too, and making sure there's continuity there. How do they feel about the emails they're receiving from you, the communications they're receiving from you, even down to the way maybe the way your invoices are formatted, right? Or the the way you're trying to accept payments or collect payments from them, or the way you're trying to educate them, if any of us do that. How many of us in the room really make an effort to educate our clients as part of our offering? Yeah, there's a lot more. Some people are sleepy. I think we've had some food. Yeah, so that's the gist, right? And it's really that simple. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. So why is client experience important? I'm going to flash some stats up here in a little bit, but they're pretty powerful stats. And since you have client experience on lock for the most part, why would you say it's important? Like, what were some of the benefits you saw for asking?
It told us to really what we needed to prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to
Prioritization.
make processes better, but what was more important to do, like electronic payment first, as opposed to electronic receipt of tax returns, how to move in the right direction. So that way they could see if there was some progress. What was the easiest thing to do?
That's great. Yeah. And I really like the word prioritization too, right? Because it helps you focus where you need to be, where your efforts need to be in order to really enhance that experience. So here's some interesting stats. No deck is complete without stats. But these are pretty powerful, right? So 96% of buyers state that good customer service increases their loyalty to a brand. That's no surprise to anyone here, but it is important to see that continues to be the trend. Now, 84% of companies that are working to improve client experience report increase in revenue. Now, that's interesting. That's important. And here's a nice benefit on the side. There were some presentations on culture and things like that. This next stat shows that it has an impact on culture. 1.5 times is the increase in employee engagement among client experience-focused companies. And that kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? Because if you're making an effort to make your clients happy, right, and really create a unique, wonderful experience with them, they're in turn going to be happier working with you, and your employees, therefore, are going to have a better time working with your clients, right? It's a pretty simple formula. And also it shows that your company cares, right? You care about how your clients feel. Your firm is 100% based on how your clients feel. If they don't like you, they're not going to work with you. If they do like you, they will continue to work with you. And on that note, the top reason customers switch brands is feeling unappreciated. The number one reason. And this sample size was over 30-something thousand businesses across multiple industries, a majority of which were in professional services. So, and I put this down here. I think you're going to share the slides later, yeah, after all of this. So you guys are welcome to look that up in those studies, just so you know where this data is coming from. But, appreciation is really important, right? At the end of the day, you're working really hard for your clients to help them organize their finances, save them money, help educate them on new risks or any liabilities. And at the same time, while you're working really hard, they're also wanting to feel appreciated for handing you their money when you're done doing that work, right? They're thinking, wow, I'm paying this money regardless of what it is. They want to feel like you appreciate my business, you enjoy working with me. So what should we do about all this, right? We just looked at stats. We just kind of set the framework of why it's important, what it is. So what's the next step? And this is my favorite part of this short presentation. But, do you invest in an expensive CX tech stack? There are plenty of tools out there that will be happy to take tons of your money to do that. Some of them are very good, wise investments. It's not to say you shouldn't do this, but you should do it carefully. But is that the first step? And just so I understand a little bit more about who we have in here, how many of us in this room have firms with an in-house marketing team or outsourced marketing team? Okay, a few. And how many of us in here have firms where we're doing the marketing ourselves, or maybe an admin's doing the marketing or the sales? Okay, all right, a majority. Right, so do you hire, considering the size of your firm, do you hire CX professionals? We all know nobody's going to leave here and do that. But it is good to look into it. Or do we start to improve client experience? Do we make a jump and say, hey, here's some nice gifts, kind of randomly perform acts of kindness or maybe launch incentive programs, give them discounts or things like that. Also not necessarily wise to do out of the gate, right? Because this is all going to come back to what you were saying, which is ask, right? So if we look at a practical approach to improving client experience, you nailed it. It's just ask. And so how many of us in the room right now are asking our clients? How many of us ask our clients if they were happy with, as soon as you're done with whatever it is you're working on, you ask them outright, how do you feel about the way we just engaged with each other? It doesn't have to sound like that. It sounds awkward. But everybody gets what I'm saying, yes? Okay, 1, 2, 3, that's it? Nobody else is asking in any way?
Well, what about calling them up next week once they cool down?
Oh, that's very strategic. I like that. Yeah, once they cool down. That counts too.
Cool down and pay for your-
Okay, so calling after cooling down also counts. But at some point in time after the transaction, right, after the business part is done, it sounds like a majority of people here are not taking part of that, not doing that. So you're missing out on a killer opportunity because the answer is always just ask. If you want to know what they're thinking, if you want, there were presentations earlier on advisory services, on culture, on all kinds of stuff. Everything with client experience has a direct thread to all of those elements of your firm, right? And so you can't really do anything effectively if you don't understand what it is that your clients want and what their expectations are. And so the best way to do that is to just ask. So let's dive into some ways on how. How are we doing on time? Oh, great. So this is it. This is the last slide. But it's literally this simple. And if anybody has questions about this or is interested, there are some other vendors here that are, offer huge time savings and simplifying things for firms. But if we're looking at just asking clients, we're just saying listening. All we're doing is listening. Are we listening to our clients? Of course, we're going to listen to them when it comes to them providing us the information that we need to get our jobs done. But are we listening to what they're really saying? Are we listening to, maybe how they're saying it, how they feel about certain things? And then are we actually kind of finding a way to analyze and process that? And then most importantly, find a repeatable way to do that. And so the first step here is just use simple mechanisms, right? When it comes to the ask, you want to actually figure out what it is that your clients are thinking. You want to handle the ask part. If your firm is small enough, absolutely call them up. Let them cool off for a little while if you need to. And just call them up and see how they're feeling. But keep in mind, you want to make sure that you have a standardized set of questions. And I'll tell you, while all of them can't be quantifiable, the more you can do that, the better. You want to build something that scales because your firm, ideally, is not going to be small throughout its entire course, right? You're going to want to grow your firm, and the only way to do that is to understand what your clients want. And the only way to understand what your clients want is to ask and find a way to do that in a repeatable fashion. And so these are just some simple ways. Mechanisms is just a fancy word, but just simple feedback tools, right? And maybe there's a pre-consultation questionnaire, a post-transaction questionnaire. My favorite of all time, the win-loss analysis. Has anyone done a win-loss analysis in here? Does anyone do that regularly? We only had 3, I think, that were asking what the clients wanted. But that one's great because everyone knows when you're collecting data, especially from clients, the best data is the bad data, the nitty-gritty data, because that really gives you an idea of where to course correct, right? And win-loss analysis also is nice, right? You earn their business, you send a basic win-loss analysis. All of these things, by the way, they sound very formal. And there's a way to build these in an incredibly informal, conversational way. And if you're not comfortable sending this to clients in a, say, SurveyMonkey, which we have down here, or a link or something like that, which will help you gather that data, just make sure you're asking the same questions all the time so that you can actually start to gather that and have meaningful information at some point in time and recognize trends. And there's nothing wrong with calling them and completing that same thing. And even if you're using SurveyMonkey or Google Forms or whatever it is to collect that information, you can actually enter that yourself if you still prefer to be on the phone with your clients asking these questions. No problem with that. You might find that you'll get more honest answers without that, but sometimes it's still nice to get on the phone and knock this out. So So leverage automation and data. And so really all that's saying here on the second step is that you want to do this in a repeatable fashion. If you don't have a system for asking for this information, what's going to happen is you're going to call a couple clients, you'll gather a little bit of information, you'll put that paper together on your desk, and then you're going to get slammed. You're going to get busy, and nobody on your team is going to find time to actually reach back out and continue that data gathering so that you can identify trends and make any shifts that you need to shift. Back to advisory services, killer way to figure out what you should be offering. Ask, right? Format it in a way where you're just asking clients, what else could I do to help you? What else, knowing what it is that I do, how else can I help you and your family, right? Or your business? Simple question. And over time, you'll start to see trends depending on how many clients you have, and that's really useful. So the automation and data side, if you're not comfortable doing that, where let's say you just complete a transaction or a project or whatever it is that you're working on with the client, and you don't want to use an email template that fires off and has your logo and sounds really stale, that's fine, right? Pull up Gmail. Say, hey, thanks again. You know, if you'd like for me to call you, I can call you to gather this information. Otherwise, you're welcome. It takes 3 minutes. It's 5 questions. Always keep them short. And just click here. I would love to hear what you have to say about your experience with us to gather that information. And the more you can automate that, the more you can ensure it happens consistently. And therefore, the more you'll be able to review that data regularly and pivot wherever you need to, right? I'll share some when I started my business, this was years ago, I was so excited about automation. It was a digital marketing agency. I was using HubSpot, right, and all these other tools. And I had this whole process down where when prospects reached out, they would get this survey and they would hear from us, and most of them were pretty impressed with that. And then it got to this consultation where it queued it up, and I would hop on the phone and chat with them, and we got off the conversation. And I started using SurveyMonkey to automate this feedback. The very first response I got was, your consultation sucks. And I was, it broke my heart. But what I realized was I leaned too much on automation, right? And this person was like, I just wanted to get on the phone and figure something out. And you were trying to walk me through a process that was over-engineered. So it can work backwards too. You want to make sure that you're actually able to do this in a very comfortable way for your clients and for your prospects. So with that said, that's just a synopsis of how to actually engage. I know it seems incredibly simple. I'm happy to shed more light on this wherever you guys like after this. And again, I'm with CPACharge. CPACharge fits into the client experience puzzle and the payment space and accepting payments from your clients and making it nice and seamless experience for them. Obviously, very competitive rates and tons of features. So that's it. Any questions? Nope. All right. Thank you very much.